The line was quiet for a moment too long before my father finally spoke. "I've transferred the rights to your delivery system to Savannah," he said. Calm. Final. Like he was announcing the weather. I didn't move. Didn't blink. My hand clutched the side of the stainless steel lab bench, so hard my knuckles whitened. "She deserves it more than you," he continued. "She knows how to monetize it. You never did understand the business side of things." The words didn't register at first. I was staring at the sequencing display on my screen. An array of fluorescent markers blinking in rows. The result of 5 years of work. 5 years of failing, recalibrating, staying up until 3 a.m. with nothing but black coffee and my mother's old notebook to guide me. He had just given it away, as if it were his to give. I glanced at the digital clock in the corner of the monitor. 6:18 p.m. The sun was low outside my lab at the Stanford Research Institute, the light slanting across beakers and pipettes. Everything was quiet, except the voice in my ear dismantling my life. "You can't do that," I said finally, my voice like steel. "The patent isn't yours to transfer." "Of course it is," he said, a chuckle undercutting his arrogance. "Graves Medical Innovations funded your research. It belongs to the company, and as CEO I get to decide what's done with it." I could almost see his face, leaning back in that monstrous leather chair in the corner office of the company my mother built, fingers steepled, satisfied. "Savannah has the instincts you lack," he added. "She understands the market. She knows how to pitch." I stared down at my phone. The screen still showed his name. Robert Graves. Not Dad. I almost laughed. Almost. I turned my gaze back to my laptop, where the most important email I'd ever received sat unopened. From the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. Confirmation of receipt. Dated 3 months ago. Filed independently, under my name alone. He didn't know. Not yet. I leaned into the phone, my tone deceptively soft. "Then I hope Savannah enjoys trying to monetize a system she doesn't even understand." Silence. He'd expected begging. Anger. Desperation. But I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was just ready. "That's all," he said after a pause. "Legal will send over the transfer papers. Good luck." "Good luck with that," I replied and hung up. My hand shook slightly as I placed the phone on the counter. Not from fear. Not anymore. But from the knowledge that the fuse had finally been lit. I grabbed my personal phone and typed a single message. He did it, just like we predicted. Sent. To Sarah Martinez. Then I slid down onto the lab stool. Exhaled slowly. My entire body buzzed, not with panic, but with clarity. This was it. I'd spent the last year watching the house my mother built slowly rot from the inside out. Ever since my father remarried. Ever since he brought Deanne and her daughter Savannah into our world of science, turning it into a corporate showroom. They thought I was naive, that I'd stay silent, that I'd accept being erased. They were wrong. And now they were going to learn exactly who they tried to steal from. It started with the gala. The Graves Medical Innovations annual fundraiser had always been a celebration of legacy, of progress, of my mother. That year, I had just presented our early findings to a room full of investors, preliminary results from the molecular targeting trial. Applause had still been ringing in my ears when my father introduced them. "This is Deanne," he said, smiling like a man who'd rewritten history. "And this is Savannah, her daughter. She just earned her MBA." I remember Savannah's handshake. Cold, calculated. Her eyes scanned me, not with interest, but with appraisal. I was a number to her. A title. A threat. Later that night, my father stood on the stage and made an announcement that drained the blood from my face. "Savannah Quinn will be joining GMI as our new head of strategic development," he said. "She's going to modernize our brand and bring in a fresh perspective." People clapped. I smiled on the outside. Inside, I felt the crack. A fault line that had been forming since the day my mother died, now widened by a single sentence. Over the next few months, the changes were subtle but relentless. First, they reduced my lab access. No official memo, just a quiet removal from shared projects, a denied badge scan here, a closed meeting door there. My research team, people I had mentored for years, were reassigned one by one under the guise of optimization. Then came the budget cuts. No explanation, just spreadsheets sent to my inbox with red lines through critical funding items, the centrifuge I needed, the new reagent trial phase gone. Savannah, meanwhile, strutted through the hallways of GMI in pristine white blazers and stilettos, armed with buzzwords and LinkedIn posts about breaking barriers in STEM. I tried to reach out. I invited her to the lab, offered to explain the protocols. Her reply? I don't need to know the science, Eleanor. I just need to know how to sell it. That night, I sat in my apartment and stared at my mother's old microscope. My nameplate from when she gave me my first internship still sat inside the case. I realized something. They weren't just pushing me out, they were preparing to replace me. That's when I called Sarah. We hadn't spoken in years, but she picked up on the first ring. Ellie, she said, it's been forever. I need a lawyer, I said. Someone who understands intellectual property and betrayal. Over the next few months, I did exactly what Sarah told me to do. Document everything. Every restricted login. Every deleted budget line. Every email Savannah sent with buzzwords that made no sense but carried the weight of corporate approval. More importantly, I began isolating the parts of my work that were mine. Truly mine. Experiments done off hours in my home lab. Protocols I had developed independently. Funded with my own grants. Every detail backed up, time-stamped, witnessed. I called the new project Heritage. A name my mother would have understood. Sarah helped me file the independent patent quietly, without GMI's name attached. As I sent the final batch of documents to the USPTO, I stared at the screen for a long time before hitting send. It felt like pressing a detonator, not out of malice, but survival. They took everything but my name. And now, that name was about to be the one thing they could never erase. The night I filed the patent, I didn't sleep. Instead, I sat in the dark of my apartment, surrounded by printouts, flash drives, and notarized statements. The weight of what I'd done hadn't settled yet. I wasn't afraid. I was bracing. Sarah had warned me, the moment they try to claim your work, the system will flag it. That's when we move. I didn't expect it to come so soon. 3 months passed quietly. I kept my head down, went to work, kept up appearances. Let them believe they'd won. Let Savannah keep strutting into meetings she didn't understand, nodding like she'd just solved molecular oncology with a branding campaign. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, ironically, the day of my mother's birthday, it happened. A notification popped up on my screen. Urgent. IP transfer legal documentation attached. I didn't even open it. Instead, I forwarded it to Sarah with one line, showtime. I packed my things in silence. The lab was empty, it always was now. No one invited me to meetings anymore. No one asked for my input. Even the interns had stopped making eye contact. I wasn't bitter. I was invisible by design. They thought I'd given up, which was exactly what I needed them to think. By the time I reached Sarah's office, her team had already taken over the glass-walled conference room. Timelines lined the walls. Charts, diagrams, email threads. Months of preparation laid out like a war map. Sarah looked up, calm as ever. Right on schedule, she said. I dropped my laptop bag onto the table. Did they really think they could get away with this? She gave a wry smile. They still do. As we reviewed the submission data from GMI, it was almost comical. They had tried to backdate the internal documentation, list Savannah as co-developer, even cite company funding for trials they hadn't approved. All of it sloppily fabricated, a lie stacked on top of arrogance. And then came the cherry on top. Sarah handed me a manila envelope. You're going to love this. Inside were printouts of Savannah's credentials, or rather, the lack thereof. She's not just underqualified, Sarah said. Her MBA program? Not even accredited. The university was flagged last year for falsifying transcripts. I shook my head slowly. She's going to walk into a federal hearing and try to explain gene-targeted drug systems with a fake degree. She'll implode, Sarah said. But your father's the real story here. The CEO who tried to transfer a patent he never owned. USPTO doesn't take kindly to fraud. My phone buzzed. It was Savannah. Again. Alex, we need to discuss the transfer. I have some monetization ideas I'd love to share. I laughed out loud. Sarah didn't even look up. Let it go to voicemail. We're past emails and conference calls now. And we were. This was no longer about departments or company politics. This was about truth, about ownership, about a daughter defending the last thing her mother left her. As we finalized the paperwork for the formal dispute and scheduled our meeting with the USPTO reps, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, grounded. The fear was gone. The shame was gone. The desperate need for my father's approval? Gone. They wanted a fight. Now they were going to get one. On my terms. The building hadn't changed. Same cold marble floors. Same glass walls. Same portraits of my father and late mother. Side by side. Frozen in a lie that had long since crumbled. I stood across the street from Graves Medical Innovations, watching lawyers in suits rush in and out, clutching folders, whispering frantically into phones. Panic mode. Sarah asked beside me, sipping her coffee like this was just another morning. I nodded. They just learned you can't transfer what you never owned. We walked in together, documents in hand, confidence in every step. My phone buzzed with yet another call from my father. I ignored it. Let him wait. The receptionist glanced up and visibly flinched. I saw the recognition flash in her eyes. Upstairs, the main conference room loomed behind thick glass doors. My father was already inside, his expression stormy, jaw clenched tight. Savannah stood to his right, flipping through a file, pretending to read. Deanne sat beside them, hands folded neatly, her face pinched with tension. When they saw me, the room shifted. Alexandra, my father barked. In my office. Now. But Sarah stepped forward first. Any discussion regarding intellectual property will happen with counsel present. We're here to meet with the USPTO representatives, as scheduled. The fury in his eyes. I had seen it before when I was 12 and had told him I wanted to study biochemistry instead of joining his business school pipeline. But this time I didn't shrink. This is a family matter, he growled. No, I said firmly. This is a legal matter. You tried to transfer a patent you don't own. That's fraud. The word landed like a thunderclap. Savannah paled. Deanne stiffened. Even the junior attorneys in the room shifted uncomfortably. Moments later, 2 women in dark suits walked in. Dr. Patricia Wong, USPTO, one said, and I'm Andrea Martinez, special legal advisor. They wasted no time. We're here to investigate the attempted transfer of patent application number 977,524G, Dr. Wong began, filed independently by Dr. Eleanor Graves. My father cut in. There's a misunderstanding. All of Eleanor's work was funded by GMI. It belongs to the company. Sarah didn't flinch. She simply slid a binder across the table. This contains documentation of all independently funded experiments, verified lab logs, and third-party notarized research entries. None of the breakthrough phases were conducted under GMI's oversight. Dr. Wong flipped through the pages with a practiced eye. This is extensive. Savannah tried to speak. But my MBA I was supposed to help commercialize from an unaccredited institution, Andrea Martinez added, which raises questions about the company's due diligence in attempting this transfer. I turned to Savannah. Tell me, since you're so qualified, can you explain the molecular binding mechanism behind the delivery system? Her lips parted. No sound came out. My father stared at the table. The silence thickened. Dr. Wong closed the binder. Attempting to transfer a patent under false ownership is a serious federal offense. I was trying to protect her, my father exploded suddenly. She's brilliant in the lab, but hopeless with business. Savannah was going to help her. By stealing her name off the file? Sarah asked, voice smooth as glass. By erasing her completely? He looked at me now, desperate. We're a family. We can fix this. You stopped being my family the day you chose a stranger's ambition over your daughter's truth. I pulled a folder from my briefcase and placed it on the table. Effective immediately, I withdraw from GMI. I founded my own firm, Gravitas Biotech. The research, the patent, the future, they go with me. The room froze. Savannah stared. Deanne gasped softly. My father reached for the papers, fingers trembling. You won't survive on your own, he muttered. I smiled faintly. We'll see. The next morning, I woke to chaos. Emails, missed calls, texts piling up like a blizzard. A notification from a biotech news feed nearly made me drop my coffee. Breaking. GMI unveils groundbreaking drug delivery system. Led by Savannah Quinn. I blinked, then clicked play on the live stream. There she was, Savannah, in a white lab coat that looked freshly purchased and barely worn, standing at the GMI press podium like a child in costume. Behind her was my father, beaming, his arm resting casually on the podium like this was just another corporate win. Our new proprietary drug delivery system, Savannah read stiffly from cue cards, uses advanced molecular targeting to deliver therapeutic agents directly to disease sites, minimizing impact on healthy tissue. Those were my words, word for word, from the patent application I had filed 3 months ago. Sarah burst into my office mid-sentence. Turn on the news. Now. I already did, I said flatly, eyes still locked on the screen. This is patent theft on national television, she hissed. We're filing for an emergency injunction. Now. The next 12 hours were a blur. Sarah's team filed motions at lightning speed. We pulled together every shred of documentation. Lab footage, time-stamped files, backup logs. By sunset, I had a formal meeting with an FDA advisor who had followed my work since its infancy. You're not the only one shocked by this, he said. But trust me, the scientific community pays attention. Not fast enough, I said. They've already poisoned the narrative. The media's calling her a visionary. Then it's time you stop being quiet. Sarah stood in the doorway, holding out a tablet. Wall Street Journal. They want your side of the story. So does Biotech Weekly. You tell your story now, Eleanor, or they win. For years, I believed my work would speak for itself, that the purity of the science, the data, the truth would be enough. But not this time. This time, silence would be complicity. That evening, I sat down with a reporter from the Journal. I told her everything, not just about the research, but about my mother, about GMI's origins, the years of silent sabotage, the power plays. I showed her emails, timelines, footage. I explained the delivery system in plain English because I understood it. I built it. By dawn, the article was live. Theft in the lab. Daughter claims GMI stole her cancer research for profit. The biotech world exploded. Within hours, researchers I'd never met were reposting the article. Former colleagues shared my evidence. Some even admitted they'd seen similar things happen in other companies. Women's work pushed aside, credit handed to those with louder voices or richer bloodlines. Savannah tried damage control. She scheduled an interview with a lifestyle podcast. It backfired spectacularly. When asked about the research process, she blanked. The host, clearly flustered, asked if she could explain how molecular binding works. Well, it's like Uber for medicine, she offered, smiling weakly. It was over. By nightfall, GMI issued a statement clarifying that Savannah had led the business side but was not directly involved in scientific development. The market smelled the blood. Stocks dipped, then dropped, then nosedived. I was in the lab, watching my team prep early-stage trials when the phone rang again. This time it wasn't Savannah. It was Deanne. "You're destroying your father!" she snapped before I could speak. "No," I said, calmly setting down my pipette. "He destroyed himself. I'm just making sure I'm not collateral damage." She faltered. "What do you want? An apology? A payout? Tell us your price." I looked around at the white boards filled with formulas, at the young women in lab coats pushing forward with real purpose, real science. "I want what's mine," I said. "No more. No less." The report from the USPTO dropped like a thunderbolt. Patent application 977524G was lawfully filed by Dr. Eleanor Graves as an independent entity. Any attempts to transfer or claim ownership without her consent constitute patent fraud. Their words, not mine, and they weren't finished. The investigation, now under joint review by the FDA and Department of Commerce, unveiled far more than just the attempted theft. It revealed a timeline of rushed trials, falsified development dates, and internal pressure from GMI's executive board to move faster at the cost of safety protocols. That morning, I stood in my lab reviewing Phase 2 testing data when Sarah stormed in, breathless. "Turn on CNBC," she said, eyes blazing. The screen lit up with a live feed from GMI headquarters. My father stood behind the podium, shoulders hunched. His skin looked pale, sagging. Gone was the booming voice, the silver-haired titan of biotech. "I am officially stepping down as CEO of Graves Medical Innovations, effective immediately," he read from a statement. "Under my leadership, the company lost sight of its founding principles. For that, I take full responsibility." The feed cut away before the final sentence, but I didn't need to hear it. The damage had already been done. 2 hours later, I was seated across from a table of venture capitalists, 3 of the largest biotech investors in the country. They had read the journal piece, watched the footage, and seen the data. "Dr. Graves," one of them said, flipping through my pitch deck, "you didn't just protect your research. You exposed a system. You're not just a scientist. You're the future of the industry." When I left the room, Gravitas Biotech had secured $50 million in funding. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were building. That evening, I received a text from Savannah. "Can we talk?" I nearly deleted it, but something made me pause. We met at a quiet cafe near the waterfront. No cameras, no podiums, just 2 women who had once been forced into a war neither of them truly understood. Savannah looked different. No designer bag, no blowout hair, just jeans, a sweater, and eyes that no longer held mirrors. Just the weight of everything left unsaid. "I'm sorry," she said, voice low. "I know it doesn't change anything, but I needed to say it." I studied her face, searching for manipulation, spin, but there was only exhaustion. "Regret. Why did you do it?" I asked. She looked down at her untouched tea. "Because he told me you were selfish, that you didn't see the big picture, that the family company needed unity. I believed him because I wanted to matter." She looked up. "I didn't understand the science, Eleanor. It terrified me. I wanted so badly to be seen as smart, as useful." "So you tried to steal something you didn't even comprehend," I said softly. She nodded. "I thought it wasn't stealing, just family redistribution." I didn't say anything. Then she whispered almost to herself, "God, I sound like him." My phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Chin, my mother's old partner, and now the acting interim director of GMI's remaining scientific board. The board voted. "They're cleaning house. They want to talk to you." "What for?" I muttered, more to myself. "They want to rebuild," Sarah said, stepping into the cafe. "With your name, your vision, your mother's legacy." I stared out the window at the lights shimmering over the bay, thought about my mother in her old lab coat, smiling under fluorescence as she scribbled formulas on the back of a receipt. Thought about the first time she let me touch a microscope. Tell them I'm honored, I said, but I already have a company. One built on the values she lived by. Savannah was silent. Then, quietly, she said, I'm enrolling in community college. Chemistry 101. I want to understand this for real, not just pretend anymore. I gave her a small nod. For the first time, it didn't feel like a lie. He came to see me just after sunset. I was still at the lab, alone. Everyone had gone home. The place was silent except for the gentle hum of the incubators and the faint click of my keyboard. When I looked up, he was standing in the doorway like a ghost from another life. Older, smaller, no longer the man who used to fill entire boardrooms with his presence. I suppose you're happy now, my father said, his voice rough. The mighty Robert Graves, brought down by his own daughter. I didn't speak, just watched him lower himself into a chair like someone carrying invisible weight. You brought yourself down, I said quietly. I just refused to let you take me with you. He sighed, rubbing his hands together. I was trying to protect the company. No, I cut in, my voice steady. You were trying to protect your image. You turned GMI into a marketing firm in a lab coat, and you used my research like it was yours to offer. He flinched when I said it, like the truth still had the power to burn. Catherine would be disappointed in me, wouldn't she? He asked. I paused. Yes, I said simply. She would. He swallowed hard, looked around the lab like he was really seeing it for the first time. Rows of high-end equipment funded by investors who believed in science, not spin. My mother's old microscope sat by the window, newly polished, quietly radiant. And you, he asked, what would make you happy now? Money? Control of GMI? I let out a soft breath, turned slightly toward the whiteboard scrawled with trial data and breakthroughs. This, I said, real work, real science, real progress. That's what makes me happy. That's what Mom taught me to value. He nodded slowly, then stood, adjusting his coat like the conversation had drained him of something he couldn't name. I don't suppose there's any way to fix this. I looked him in the eye for the first time in years with no fear, no need to be seen. Not between us, I said, but you can still fix yourself. Tell the truth. Stop pretending. Be someone Mom would have been proud of. He nodded once, then turned and walked out. The door clicked shut behind him. I stood there a while longer, just listening to the silence he left behind. And then I returned to my desk because people were still waiting for what we were building. Lives depended on it. Later that night, Sarah returned from a meeting with the new oversight committee at GMI. They're talking about renaming the company, she said, wiping the slate clean. A full reset. Good, I replied. It needs one. And us? She asked, setting down her tablet. Final trial results look incredible. We're ahead of schedule. If this holds, we're looking at FDA approval before the end of the year. I smiled, thinking of my mother's journal, of the words she once wrote in the margins of a protocol draft. Never settle for what's expected. Reach for what's just beyond possible. Then Sarah said something I hadn't expected. Savannah called again. She passed her first chemistry midterm. I looked down at my hands, the same hands that once trembled under pressure, now steady, purposeful. She said she wants to do it right this time. No shortcuts. No pretending. I didn't respond for a moment. Then I said simply, good for her. The next morning, I arrived early at the lab. The sunrise poured through the glass, casting gold over everything we had built. Whiteboards covered in formulas, benches crowded with promise. On my desk sat a small brown package. No label, just a note. Thought this belonged to you. Chin. Inside was my mother's old lab notebook, faded, worn, and familiar. On the first page, written in her looping cursive, were the words I never knew I needed. To my Eleanor, who sees the world not just as it is, but as it could be. Never let anyone dim your light or steal your dreams. You are capable of more than they will ever know. Love, Mom. I traced the ink with my finger, my throat tight. This wasn't just a victory. It was a beginning. As the team filed in behind me, I stood tall, lifted the notebook, and smiled. Let's show them, I said softly, what real innovation looks like. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was fighting anymore. I felt free. In the weeks that followed, things moved fast. The clinical trials surpassed every expectation. Investor meetings turned into long-term partnerships. Gravitas Biotech wasn't just surviving, it was reshaping the future of cancer treatment. And the story? It had already taken on a life of its own. Interviews, features, panel invitations. But the part that meant the most wasn't any of that. It was the letters from women in STEM who had been silenced, from daughters who were passed over for sons, from strangers who had watched the press conference and whispered to themselves, I would have given up, but maybe I don't have to. I kept every single one, and every time I felt that old ghost of doubt creeping in, every time I thought of how easily things could have broken me, I opened my mother's notebook. Those words in her careful handwriting never failed to steady me. Never let anyone dim your light or steal your dreams. This wasn't about revenge anymore. Not really, because the best revenge was never about humiliation or power plays. It wasn't about lawsuits or public failures. The best revenge was becoming the woman they never believed you could be. The one who doesn't ask for a seat at the table because she builds her own. The one who turns betrayal into blueprint and silence into legacy. The one who doesn't just win. She redefines what winning looks like. And maybe, just maybe, she leaves behind a light bright enough for the next girl who dares to dream.